Caesar rocked up with his Roman guys in Britain in 50 something BC. Okay, so just about the turn of the millennium. The people living on the island at this point, they were the ancient Britons. Okay, these were Celtic people. Okay, so these people, they spoke a language which was nothing like modern day English, not even anything like ancient English, or Old English, I should say. The language these people spoke was like Welsh, it was like Irish, like Cornish, like Scottish Gaelic, like Cumbrian, like Galician, which is a language spoken in the northwest of Spain, like Breton, if you know where that is, in the northwest of France. This is what would you call it, like a line, big vertical line of Celtic communities. It's called the Celtic Band. So the Romans rock up at about the turn of the millennium, about 50 years before the birth of Christ, and then starts the Roman rule of Britain. In this time, a lot of Latin is absorbed into the language of the ancient Britons, but don't forget that these guys' languages, this is nothing to do with English, okay? The word English comes from, as you correctly say, a Germanic tribe called the Angles, who then got together with the Saxons, Anglo-Saxons. So when the Roman Empire started to fall down and started to collapse, the, sort of quote unquote savages of the, the German and the Scandinavian tribes, who up until then, they'd been living outside the realm of civilization, so to speak, they could then start to move around a little bit more freely. Because before that, if they tried to go to England, then the Romans would have, seen them off with a spear. So now you get this mass migration of Angles and Saxons and Germanic people rocking up on the island of Britain. Okay. Now, we don't really know what happened. Some people think there was like some huge invasion, some huge battle. I don't think that's what happened. There's not much evidence to suggest that. There's no archaeological evidence of some big epic battle. Most people think that it was just a slow, frankly boring process where Angles and Saxons kept migrating to England and kept taking up positions of power, and eventually
weeding everybody out.
Exactly. And so and this period of history is called the Anglo-Saxon Migration. Okay, so the Anglo-Saxon.
How long was it? Do you know? Like, I mean, was it centuries or was it thousands of years? Centuries. Okay.
Or about a century.
A century. Okay.
And then at the end of that, now what you've got is the ancient Britons, the Celts. They'd been pushed back to Cornwall, to Wales, to Scotland, to Ireland, and some of them to the north.
Like onto the edges, basically.
Exactly. And that's why to this day, this kind of Celtic feel that you get to if you go to Wales or you go to Scotland, you go to Cornwall, even it's got a completely different feel to the rest of England. And even if you go to the northwest of Spain or you go to the northwest of France, people in these parts of the countries, they make cider and they play the bagpipes and they have little artwork with Celtic crosses and gnomes and stuff. Like centuries later, it's still there. It's really fascinating. Now, when you think of like typical English medieval history, you think of like King Arthur and the Stone and Merlin and St. George and the Dragon, all that.
I do.
That's the Anglo-Saxon times. That's what you think of. Okay, so all of this Game of Thrones shit that happened in the Anglo-Saxon period. Okay, so you've got Anglo-Saxon, much like you had like the Russian tribes. What was it? What was the battle where they defeated the Mongols? The Kulikovska battle.
Don't ask me. I told you. I suck at any history. It doesn't matter if it's mine or yours.
Any history. So, but like I think it's Kulikovska. This was like the battle that united all of the Russian tribes, and then you had like Rus after that. So before that happened in England, a similar situation. You've got kingdoms who are all fighting against each other, Game of Thrones style. You've got Wessex, you've got Mercia, you've got Northumbria. In the meantime, we're getting hammered by the Vikings from the east. And then after a few centuries of that, 1066, the Battle of Hastings.
I've heard of that.
Okay, what do you know about the Battle of Hastings?
No, it's not turn the tables. That's enough said. I've heard of that.
Okay. We got invaded by the French, essentially, by the Normans. This is the key moment.
Norman. Okay. Yeah, French borrowed words, right? That's what I know about.
Okay, you see, the knowledge is in there. So this is, as you suggest, what do you mean by French borrowed words? What were you going to say about that?
Well, because I just heard that there was this Norman, whatever it is called, invasion. Yeah, and that's why. Because I think that's, correct me if I'm wrong, that's when French basically became like the language of elite. And that's why, as far as I know, people who, for instance, were of a higher class, they spoke French, and most of the words that were connected to food, for instance, are borrowed from France. Whereas words, like animals, for instance, which people from higher classes didn't really have to deal with, they were still English. Like, for instance, that's why pork and beef, they're kind of French words, whereas animals, are still English, right?
That's exactly correct. And that's a good example. So if you look at the words for livestock, for animals, because if you look at Russian, those words are all they're all one root, right? You have alina, or look at any
Svinya.
Exactly. The only exception in Russian.
It's a weird example that you just heard. Why would you think of that?
I don't know. It's the first one that came to my head. I love venison. But the only exception in Russian is Korova Говядина, but that's easily explained because that comes from this, from the word Govyada, which is still a Slavic word, right? An old Slavic root.
I guess.
But yeah, sure. If you look at, as you correctly say, cow, Anglo-Saxon root, pig, Anglo-Saxon, deer, Anglo-Saxon, then look at, beef. What's the French word for cow? Boeuf, un boeuf. Or for bull, rather, I should say. Mouton is the French word for sheep, like mutton in English. You have sheep, Anglo-Saxon, mutton, Latin or French. And so this is the really key moment for anyone who really wants to get a good grasp of English. It's to understand this kind of double bookkeeping that we do in terms of Anglo-Saxon and Romance. Well, when I say Romance, I don't mean, sort of rows between the teeth, dancing the tango. I mean, as in the Romantic group of languages, as in Rome, as in Latin. So any words which are more kind of Anglo-Saxon Germanic words, typically they describe something which has been in the culture a long time.
Like household, yeah.
For example, which is down to earth, which is rustic, which is earthy, which is traditional. These are massive generalizations, don't get me wrong. And anytime we want to, we use a Latin word or a word that's come to us through Norman French, any scientific word or any technical word, any abstract concept, a lot of the time, I guarantee you, fancy pants words, I guarantee you they'll be more often Latin than Anglo-Saxon. That's the really key thing to really understanding the nature of English and the history of English. And if you understand that, you understand a lot. If you want to like speak like a guy from the past, if you want to do an impression of someone who's like from the year 1066, you'll speak only using Anglo-Saxon roots. You won't know that you're doing it, but you will do it.
It's kind of tragic though, because if you think it kind of shows you the chasm, between the high class, which were exposed to certain things, but were never exposed to animals or dirt or something household, wise, and vice versa. So it means that people of lower class, they didn't even have to learn, the names of food, for instance, because they couldn't even taste it, right? So it's like, no?
Yeah, I think before we sort of all jump on this Marxist bus, I think it's not. it's not quite as stark a difference or deeper chasm as you're making it out to be, I think. And this is a perfectly natural process. This is not specific to English. It happens in Russian. Okay, you've got Church Slavonic and Ancient Russian, right? The exact same thing. Only in this case, it was maybe more related to the church as opposed to invading forces. But that's by the by. Yeah, it's interesting to note where so there's something in language is called a doublet, right? So a doublet is when, so I had Ira Letsenko on the podcast a year ago almost, and we were talking about like a good example in Russian. You can look, so there's this Greek word, right? A lot of Greek words in Russian, as you know.
That's what I wanted to say. Also, can I interrupt you?
Please,
because you
please.
said like lots of science words came from French, and I was sure that those like academic words mostly came from Greek, no?
Well, a bit of both, a bit of both. This is the thing. So there are different types of doublets. So here's an example in Russian. I'll give you one in English as well. So you've got a Greek root to say extinguish, right? Tushit is asbestos in Greek, right? In ancient Greek. That undergoes centuries and centuries of evolution going through Greek into Old Russian, Church or whatever it is, and eventually you get the Russian word izvest. Okay, so izvest is from this Greek root meaning extinguishable, right? Because lye in English, by the way, lye is izvest. Lye it sort of burns even if you pour water on it. That's the idea. So it's called something unextinguishable.
Like now, this?
Yes. So even if you put a negative root, a negative prefix, okay, on the beginning of that in Greek, a, and what do you have? Asbestos, which in modern Russian we just went and we took that down. We skipped all of those hundreds of years of evolution. We went boom, we're having that, and we got the Russian word asbest. So asbest and izvest are one and the same word, but one has undergone loads of evolution and become a Russian word, and then the other was just stolen from Greek directly or borrowed from Greek directly. This happens all the time. You get it with collateral adjectives, right? So in English, you have an adjective which is a direct adjective, right? A friend is friendly, a sun is sunny, right? But the moon is not moony. What's the moon? The moon is lunar.
Lunar, yeah.
And I don't need to tell you, where does the word lunar come from? Obviously, Latin.
Wait, but what about solar?
Aha, this is what I was going to say. To conclude the presentation today. Sunny and solar. What do we have there? One is an Anglo-Saxon root. One is a Latinate root. Okay? And this is a linguistic doublet in its finest plumage. What is sunny? A day can be sunny. Sunny weather, sunny picture, sunny photograph, sunny personality, maybe you could say, metaphor, disposition, right? What's solar? Solar orbit, solar radiation, solar flare, solar system represent, right? And so that is the best example I can think of the difference between something Anglo-Saxon and something Latinate in the English language. The former tends to be down to earth, traditional, earthy, physical, tangible. The latter tends to be esoteric, abstract, technical, scientific, etc.